You are listening to Pharmacy, IT, and Me, your informatics pharmacist podcast. As with every episode, we start off this one stating that this is intended for pharmacy students or anyone that's a newcomer to pharmacy informatics. So, today's topic, we're going to be talking about BCMA, and BCMA is barcoded medication administration. So we'll be talking about what this is, some of the advantages to using BCMA and issues of using BCMA, some of the barriers to implementing a new BCMA system, and how it relates to med safety, and what a pharmacist's role is in BCMA. So what is exactly BCMA? BCMA stands for Barcoded Medication Administration. So this is the key in closing the loop in medication administration. So what is it? BCMA is basically having a database of medications and their NDC barcode. And the process of this is when a nurse scans the wristband and they scan the medication, there's a check in the system to make sure that this medication and the order is correct. And then they can actually track the med after that. It's basically using technology to make sure that the right patient, right drug, right dose, right route, and the right time are being met. So the 5 rights of medication administration are being met. And in order for this to work, all the NDCs of the medications have to be in the system. And one of the other ways of trying to keep track of, making sure the NDCs are interchangeable with each other is having some of the medications stacked. So what that means is multiple NDCs of the same medication strength, let's say acetaminophen 325, they can be kind of stacked under the same entry. So when a medication is scanned by the nurse, any one of those NDCs will refer back to say, oh, this is acetaminophen 325. This actually affects the last part of the medication use process. And by affecting that side, the part where it's the administration side, you're reducing the amount of holes or barriers that there can be in terms of causing medication errors. So BCMA helps reduce the risk of having a medication error happen. So what are the advantages to using BCMA? One of the things that I already said earlier is BCMA is a way to close the loop. And all providers are working off one order instead of 3 or 4. What do I mean by this? Basically, before having anything on electronic, everything was on paper, right? So there was that part of transcription between the original order to the MAR. But now that it's electronic and we're incorporating BCMA, it's the same electronic order from the beginning that is also read on the EMAR afterwards. So there's only one order to keep track of versus like 3 or 4. But what are the issues of using BCMA? Well, it's very hardware dependent. So there's going to be scanners that you need to use. Sometimes there's PDAs. Sometimes we'll need a lot of laptops or workstation on wheels. There's also lots of training because this is a brand new workflow for most of the nurses. And there's also robust maintenance of the database. We have a lot of drug shortages all the time. So someone has to be always on the up and up to make sure that the NDCs are updated in the system. Also right now, the BCMA systems don't really work well with titratable medications or even PCAs because of the nature of having different doses at any different time depending on the patient's status. There's also issues with multi-ingredient drugs or pediatric drugs as well. And there's also a possibility of having barcode readability issues. So if the label itself doesn't get read correctly, then it will not identify the drug. So some of the barriers of implementing a system like BCMA, one is, I already stated, high cost. What I mean by high cost is that it's really expensive, not just counting, the training that's involved, but the equipment itself. Barcode scanners, they're not cheap. I remember when a few years ago I was working at this other place, we looked into some of the costs of the scanners. It was about like $150 to $350 per scanner. And imagine you need so many scanners for so many nurses at the hospital, right? So that's going to be a very high cost. There's also resistance to change because the culture of barcoding and like scanning, that is brand new to the workflow. So there's going to be a high resistance to change for that. There's also a strong need for network infrastructure. And this is because nurses are on the go all the time. They're moving between patient beds. So they're going to need something that is on a wireless network. And if you don't have a good network infrastructure, it's going to fail. I know that we've experienced in my past place that we've experienced issues where certain rooms were walled off because they were isolation rooms. So the Wi-Fi signal is not really good in there. So that caused the barcoding to fail because there's no network that the computer can go onto. And then finally, we also have socio-technical issues, which is different people have different experience of technology. And how do we make sure that they're all trained and they're all like on the same level when we implement this? So in terms of medication safety, there has been a reduction in medication administration errors shown in a few studies. There's a study using BCMA software to improve patient safety by Johnson et al. In 2005, they showed 10 times reduction in the incidence in an 8-year time period. And then there's a Hellman study in 2009. This is the UCSD study. They showed a 50% reduction in the medical surge unit that they did their initial BCMA deployment in. So it's basically saying that BCMA helps reduce medication administration errors and close the loop on the medication process. What exactly does a pharmacist do in terms of BCMA? Pharmacists are actually very well versed in the workflow of the pharmacy operations, and they're good at devising workflows that will accommodate for addressing BCMA. Pharmacists know the whole medication use process from the beginning to end, so they're able to figure out where in the process that they need to change to ensure that BCMA is a success. So a pharmacist can also coordinate and maintain the NDC database because there are new manufacturers all the time. There's drug shortages, there's formulary changes, and the team is also responsible for constant testing and rolling out of changes in the medication library. And even as an end-user pharmacist are very good at filtering out what is a user issue from what is a system issue. So just to give you an example of how medications are received and then placed into our BCMA system, my last place is that the order is received, and then the pharmacy buyer, they would either verify or they enter it into the inventory. And then depending on if it's unit dosed or not, if it is already unit dosed, then it goes to the pharmacy informatics team to verify the barcode scan and then verify that it is entered appropriately in the system. And then it is placed into the automated dispensing cabinet if necessary and configured there before it goes live. And if it is not unit dosed, then it gets unit dosed through the unit dose process. And again, the team is ensuring that it is appropriately barcoded and entered in the system before it goes live. In future episodes, I might go into some more detail about what certain aspects are and how to improve certain processes. But until next time, if you like this episode, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or any of your other favorite podcasting services. And you can also follow us on social media on Twitter or Facebook at PharmacyITme, or you can also follow us on Instagram at Pharmacy Informatics, or email us at pharmacyitme@gmail.com. You can also follow me on my personal Twitter account at TonyDowPharmD, or our website at pharmacyitme.com, where I'll be writing future blog posts. Thank you again for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of Pharmacy IT and Me. And remember, technology is a tool, patient care is the goal.